PodcastOne presents the Steve Austin Show Classics.
I'm talking to Edge and Christian, Adam Copeland and Jay Riso, two of my good friends from the WWE days, way back in the day. Two guys who, just like me, are now retired from the business of professional wrestling. I got a chance to catch up with Edge, who's over there, I think he's in Ireland, filming Vikings. Jay Riso was over there doing an appearance somewhere in Wisconsin. I'm sitting here at 317 Gimmick Street. This is the first time I've ever Skyped with two cats. So it's a interesting conversation. We're going to talk for about 90 minutes. We're going to talk a little bit about their past as they come up in the business, a few of the wise words I may have shared with them. And we're really going to talk about ladder matches and table, ladder, and chair matches, specifically the one from WrestleMania 17, which involved Christian and Edge, the Dudley Boys, Bubba Ray and Devon, and the Hardy Boys, Jeff and Matt, and with a special appearance by Rhino, Spike Dudley, and the one and only Lita. This was a hellacious match which just blew the doors off just pretty much about everything that night. And what a stacked card it was, with myself and The Rock headlining the event at the Astrodome in Houston on WrestleMania 17. We'll talk about some of their other things as well. But I'll tell you what, I called Christian up yesterday when I was walking around the streets of Los Angeles, walking my dogs, and said, hey, man, I said, I'd like for you guys to be on my podcast. And I didn't know if we was going to be able to make this thing work with Edge being out of the country, but we did. It was a great conversation that I very much enjoyed talking with these guys, and I will be on their podcast in the next few weeks as we do their breakdown of a match, and I think we'll probably select WrestleMania 13, and maybe the one and only Bret the Hitman Hart will participate in that podcast as well. That's to be dropped in the future, and stay tuned to Edge and Christian's podcast for more details on that. But you'll hear that come up in the end of the conversation, and I would look forward to talking about with Bret the match that we had in Chicago at the Rosemount Horizon, my favorite building to work in, with the one and only Bret the Hitman Hart, a guy that I really, really have so much respect for, and man, I love that guy. So anyway, that's coming up. But here's my conversation with Edge and Christian. I enjoyed talking to these guys. I've known them for a long time. We never traveled together. We never ran in the same circles, but we always enjoyed each other's company, jacking around with each other, killing time, playing jokes on each other, playing the Don't Look at Me game, which is the dumbest thing in the history of the world. I forget how we invented that game, but nonetheless, maybe we'll talk about it on their podcast. It's absolutely childish, but that's what you do when you're on the road as many days as a year we were, trying to kill time. Before we get into my interview with Edge and Christian, let me get you up on keeping your home safe with ADT. ADT is the first security company to help keep you safe at home and when you're on the go, and it starts with their award-winning 24/7 monitoring that has made them the #1 most trusted security company. Visit ADT.com/podcast and get an ADT starter kit professionally installed for only $49. Plus, you'll get ADT Go, the new family mobile safety app and service with family locator and 24/7 emergency response, free with any ADT security system. In addition to the locator and 24/7 emergency response, ADT Go includes private messaging, automatic check-ins, and safe driving reports. Again, go to ADT.com/podcast to learn more. It requires a 36-month monitoring contract, QSP, and Easy Pay. Activation and early termination fees may apply. Certain markets excluded. Licenses available at ADT.com. Offer ends April 1st.
Hey y'all, this is Matt
and Michelle from Thug Kitchen, here to tell you about our new show, Forked Up, a Thug Kitchen podcast exclusively on PodcastOne.
We're stepping out of the kitchen and into your earbuds every week to discuss food, politics, pop culture. Basically, we're just trying to give a and do better.
Get your shit together with us every Thursday on Forked Up, a Thug Kitchen podcast, right here on PodcastOne.
Download and listen to new episodes exclusively on PodcastOne.com, the new PodcastOne app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Thanks, y'all.
This is the Steve Austin Show.
I'm Old Sound. I'm over here at 317 Gimmick Street. Man, this is kind of unexpected and a short notice. Hell, I was walking down the street the other day with my two labs, Mula and Callie, and I said, man, I've been off the air for a week. I got to do a podcast. I've been wanting to talk to Christian and Edge, so I figured I'd shout them out, and I called Christian up, and I said, hey, man, what's up? So we shot the breeze, and I said, hey, man, let's do my podcast, and then we'll do one of yours. You guys like to break down matches and stuff like that. And I said, what about Edge? What's his schedule? And Edge, you are in another part of the world because, Jay, where are you?
Right now, I'm in Milwaukee. I got an appearance here today. So that's where I am, but we're all over the place, man.
So you're in Milwaukee. I'm in the mean streets of Los Angeles, California, and the big shot over there working on a series, a movie, or whatever you want to call it. Adam, where in the hell are you at?
I'm in Dublin, Ireland. So we're globetrotters right here. This is a globetrotting podcast. We got the West Coast, we got the Midwest, and we got damn Europe.
God dang, I was just talking to Jay before I was trying to get signed on here. I was getting my wife to add you guys on my Skype account because I don't know how to do it. And I was telling Jay, I was like, man, I got a little 12-pound dog that lives next door to me, and I've got every door shut over here in the house to try to block that damn dog's sound out. And the dog weighs 12 pounds, but he's got the vocal cords of a 100-pound mastiff. I double dog dare someone, no pun intended, to throw a 100-pound dog bone over that sumbitch so I don't have to listen to him bark anymore.
It's always the little ones that bark loudest, man.
Well, I don't know. I think the thing is starved for attention, but I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm trying to win an award over here for the greatest podcast in the history of the business. And I really think my chances are slim, guys.
I disagree because we're on it. So if this show doesn't get it done,
Well, here's something you need to know, and I'm just going to full disclosure here, Steve. We're double agents, so we've actually come to sabotage your podcast to make sure ours is the greatest podcast, and we win that award.
Dude, you ain't got to work very hard to sabotage this thing. It's the biggest clustermuck in the podcast business. Hey, before we get started, man, hell, I didn't want to go down memory lane and just shoot the breeze and just go ABC 1, 2, 3s. I really want to talk a lot about ladder matches, TLC matches, and stuff like this. But before we get involved into that discussion, Adam, with the acting stuff, have you been pursuing that hardcore ever since you left the business? Because I know your one show got canceled, and then what are you working on right now? Vikings?
Yeah, I'm on Vikings now, and it wasn't something that I was going after. I really just, when I got the news that I was medically disqualified, I was like, okay, I don't know. We'll see what comes next. I didn't know. And that show Haven, they saw my retirement speech, said, hey, do you want to come up to an episode? That episode turned into 42 episodes. But it was about halfway through the second season with them that I said, I really dig this. And I think we're all of the same mind that got to be doing something creative. Have to be just the way our minds work. And I realized that was still going to tap into that part of my brain that I need to tap into, because if not, then who knows what I become. So I really started studying. I started taking classes. I started watching movies and peeling back, why actors were making choices, just like I used to watch wrestling matches and go, okay, why did that guy do this here? And then listen to that reaction there. So I would watch movies and just really watch the performances, and okay, that made me feel this way. Why? It was because of this choice and this choice. So I really started studying, and then Haven finished up. I did an episode of The Flash, and then I got the audition for this, and a week later I was out here.
What did you have to do that? Did you have to go to do a read? Did you audition for it? Did you say, hey, man, this guy looks like a Viking, tall, blonde-headed guy, kind of looks like a Viking. Let's give him the part. What was the story?
Well, so I auditioned. I told my management team, I was like, listen, I got a short list of shows that I really want to go after. And Vikings was right in there. And because I'd always been a fan of the show, I've always been, just intrigued by the whole Viking mythology and everything. So I read for the part. I did a little Skype session with this woman up in Toronto to try and just get in the wheelhouse of the accent, make sure I was at least somewhere in the ballpark so I didn't embarrass myself. I sent in a self-tape, and they said, okay, we need you here in 5 days. And that was pretty much it. And then it's been hit the ground running ever since. And now I'm over here, almost 2 years off and on.
So what's the shoot schedule like? You try to knock out a block of, scenes that you're in? How big of a part do you have in this thing?
it's such a huge show, and there's so many different storylines. What has been amazing about it is they'll try and knock out one storyline's worth of stuff like in a week or 2 weeks. So then you have, 2 weeks off, because we do like either 2 episode 1 month blocks or 3 episodes. So for instance, this block that we start tomorrow, we're doing 3 episodes in 1 month. And it just so happens that we're doing 3 episodes worth of content for our storyline in 1 week. And then I get to go home, that's pretty rare, but I think it's just due to the amount of characters in this show and the storylines. You just, you'll be super busy for 1 week and then have 3 weeks off.
Does that keep you away from home enough that Beth can maintain her sanity, but not miss you too much for being gone on the road? Because, dude, you guys both, Adam, I can't remember when you got married, but I mean, Jesus, Jay's been married forever, and it's well documented. My success rate in the marriage department, staying in the wrestling business, hasn't been so great. Now I've been with the same woman for 14 years, married, give or take, for about 9. So I guess the schedule is pretty doable for both of you guys, and the fact you've got a young one now.
Yeah, I know. Well, for me personally, I get back whenever I have breaks, and we got 2 little girls now, so it's when I get home, Beth can get a bit of a break, and what's great about this gig is that I'm in one spot. It's not a different city every night. I come back to the same place that they have rented out for me. I can call the girls, kind of constantly throughout the day. It's not the same hectic thing that wrestling was. And I think that's, you and I are both proof that was a tough industry to have relationships in. Jay's the complete opposite of the norm, I think, and was able to do it somehow. And how, I don't know, because look at him and look at his wife, and somehow he still managed it.
Well, he's the white meat baby face in this discussion when it comes to marriages, you squeaky clean bastard. Before I ask Jay a couple of questions, you spoke of this accent. Can you give me a little bit of your accent that you use on Vikings?
I can, yeah. The real hard lessons where it's like, it's hard S's. So if you're there's no such thing as or is or his. So it's hiss, ass. I am Shatofatnos. So I talk a little bit like this. And the fluctuation goes up and down, and it's quite sing-songy.
God dang, are you a violent Viking or are you a sissy Viking? Well, I tell you what, if that had been your wrestling promo, I don't know how long you would have lasted with your very distinguished career.
It sounded at any point in time you could break out into a yodel, which would have been awesome.
Yeah. Well, and I'm wearing braids, so.
Jay, what in the wide world of sports are you doing in Wisconsin?
So yeah, I have a little appearance here today. There's a hockey team that I'm doing, and I'm a huge hockey fan. Anybody that knows me or. So it's the AHL, which is a league below the NHL. So it's the affiliate team of the Nashville Predators. So yeah, I'm going over there to I'm even trying to talk him into let me put some skates on and play in the game. I mean, I think that a 44-year-old rookie that hasn't put skates on in about 15 years, that needs work on his shot and his positioning, and is somewhat beat up from wrestling. I think that would be a good addition to any pro team.
Hey man, there's drawing power there, there's star power there. Did you play as a kid?
Yeah, I did actually. I played right up to junior hockey. Obviously growing up in Canada, and it was funny, like growing up when, in class, they would have these little sessions, I guess, where they would have you write little essays and stuff about what you wanted to be when you grew up and all these sorts of things. And I remember going up to the teacher and saying, well, I'm a little conflicted because I'm either going to be a pro wrestler or a pro hockey player. I haven't decided yet. They're like, oh, okay, maybe just like pick one and write about that or write about both. But like it was right off that pretty early on, I realized that I wanted to do something that wasn't quite normal, and I had it in my head that I'd be both of those, and wasn't quite good enough to be a pro hockey player. I wasn't quite good enough to be a wrestler, but I somehow made that work.
From the exterior, you look like a completely normal person, but obviously, dude, with your choices of what you wanted to do, a wrestler or a hockey player, here's the thing. Growing up in South Texas, man, I never was a hockey fan. I didn't get it. A bunch of guys skating around the ice with a stick, chasing a puck. Then all of a sudden, they just fight like they just start dropping gloves and they just start fighting like hell. From all your hockey days, how did that mentality not come forth in your wrestling days? Because I never knew you as a scrapper, but Jesus Christ, I mean, pretty much all pro wrestlers are tough. Not necessarily tough fighters, but tough people. My impression of hockey players is that they're all tough as nails and they'll fight at the drop of a hat. I've never known you to have any kind of temper or ever get in a fight.
Yeah, I mean, I have. And I mean, Adam and I got in our share of bar fights, and Adam was a bouncer, and I would go and hang out at the bar that he bounced at, and there was a lot of times where he got in trouble, and I'd just jump in and help him and things like that. But, I've never considered myself any kind of tough guy or anything, but I always felt like I could defend myself if I needed to. And, the worst that's going to happen is you're going to lose a fight. I mean, that's really the worst thing that's going to happen, right? So I never really thought about it that much, but it's like I just, I think you're right, though. I think that there's a mentality, I think, with wrestling also, it's very much the same I see with hockey and having played hockey that necessarily isn't there with other sports where if you're hurt, you try to work through it. It was just a mentality, right? You try not to let them know that you're hurt and you somehow fight through it. And that's what you do. And that's kind of ingrained in your DNA from an early time, like training to wrestle or training to play hockey. And I think they're very similar in that sense where they're just able to endure a lot of pain. And it's like maybe the same thing as like wrestling. When you're in there and you're taking bumps, it's almost like you build up a callus on your body, right? Like you get used to it. If you haven't bumped for a while, like 6 months or something, if you're off with an injury and you come back, those first few bumps, man, they hurt. They hurt a lot, right? Yeah. So it's like, I think it's the same kind of thing. You build up like their body kind of builds up some sort of callus, I think, in the same sort of way playing hockey as in wrestling.
You said something earlier, Adam, about being medically disqualified, and I have it somewhere in my notes. Well, you retired in 2011. When you were medically disqualified, as you said, what were your initial feelings? What came over you? What were your thoughts? How did you process that?
It was a strange time, because in terms of the mental aspect of the game, I felt like I was firing on more cylinders than I ever had. I'd been doing it for 20 years, and I really felt like I was transitioning into an area of my career where I was just going to be able to help younger talent and be able to get in there and just kind of talk to guys and say, hey, listen to that, check this out, and, things like that. So I knew that I was rounding the corner into the end. I just didn't know that it was going to be that quick. So it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be perfectly honest, I guess is the short, long answer. I'd been coming to terms with it because I knew my body was just a fraction behind what my mind was telling it. And I didn't know why. I was like, something's just a little off. And my neck's sore, but that stands to reason. I had a fusion done at the 2-level fusion, so it's going to be sore. And that's just always what I thought. It, turns out there was more going on in there that we just didn't know about.
When was the double fusion, and what were the problems that you're speaking of?
Well, so I had the double fusion in, I think it was 2002, and went down to San Antonio with Youngblood, and, you helped me a lot through that. And so I did that. I came back, and I wrestled 9 more years, after that. And, I look back at some of the folks I was working, and this is in no way a knock on them, but you're going to hear the list and understand, I was the one bumping a lot because it was Taker, it was Kane, it was Big Show, it was Batista, it was Cena, it was, I was working those baby faces. So as a heel, I was a bumping heel, and I was a bumping heel with a 2-level fusion. So eventually it's going to catch up. And the way it started catching up is, I'd be sitting on a plane and I just noticed my hands were trembling, and I couldn't control it. Like I couldn't stop it. I went, okay, that's different. That's odd. And I didn't really kind of understand the extent of what really was going on until I had another surgery in 2012, and they put in a rubber disc at C4, and they took the pressure off the cord. And I woke up on a stretcher in a hallway in the Pittsburgh hospital, and I didn't have a headache. And I went, whoa, I didn't realize I've had a headache for close to a decade. Because it became the new norm. It's what you get used to, and that's what it is. So it just becomes normal to you. And I'll look back at a match now or something, and I'll see the veins in my temples just jumping out of my head. And I'm like, oh, yeah, well, that's why, because I had that pounding headache for that long, you know?
You're listening to another classic episode of The Steve Austin Show, only on PodcastOne.
I was doing research for Jay, and I didn't know that you were going to be able to join in on the conversation because of your schedule and where you're located. So I know that Jay made almost 20 years. How long did you end up in the business, Adam?
Well, I started when I was 17, retired when I was 37. So,
right at 20.
You know, but the full grind of WWE, that started 97.
Okay, but about a 20-year career. I mean, and dude, so like you said, when the things start kind of springing up, it's like with that much time, with that kind of a career, and I think I got cut short, maybe give or take. And don't get me wrong, I took my ball and went home. I had to heal up from my neck fusion, but I think I made 13 years in the business. So a run like that, I can understand seeing the light. With you, Jay, almost 20 years. What was the thing? You never had a fusion, correct?
No, I didn't. So when with me, knock on wood, I actually was pretty injury free until I want to say it was like probably 2010ish. I had like one minor back injury, like 2004, I think, that sidelined me for a couple months. And other than that, I didn't really. I was obviously banged up and things like that, but I never had anything major until like my pec in 2010. And in 2010, it was funny because I'd never been hurt before, right? And like, it was one of those ones where I was wrestling CM Punk, and I went to pick him up, and I just reached down and, I felt it go, and I knew that previously it had been like there was a slight tear there. So I was in the shower after, and I looked down. There's this lump on the bottom of my chest, and so I finished up, and I went and looked and talked to the trainer, and I said, "Does this look right to you?" And he said, "What?" He goes, "No, I think you tore your pec." And so I flew home the next day, and they threw me in an MRI. It was funny because I had never really had an injury before, and they said, "Well, we're going to fly you up to Pensacola the next day to see Dr. Andrews," because he was in Birmingham for a couple of days, and he also had a clinic in Pensacola. So I went to see him, and he looked at it, and he's like, "Yeah." And then he starts talking to me. He's like, "Well, what we'll do is we'll fly your wife up here, so she's here. We'll get you on the bed at about 1 p.m. And I'm like, "Hold on a second, this is happening today?" He's like, "Yeah, let's get it done." And I said, "Hold on a second here. I need to just get some air." I'd never been cut before. I'd never had a surgery, so
you baby.
So I was like, I need to go outside and get some air. So I walk out, and I was like, you know what? I was like this. I'm out of here. So I start walking towards to the airport. I'm just in my head. I'm like, I'm just walking to the airport. I'm gonna fly home. And so about 20 minutes later, my phone rings, and it was John Laurinaitis, who's the head of talent relations, and he's like, "Where are you?" And I was like, man, I'm just walking. He's like, "Well, you need to go back. They need to get you ready for surgery." I said, "Nah. No, I don't really want surgery." He's like, "Wait, you have to do it," and this and that, and like I'm just trying to buy time, right? Because I just had never been cut, and I couldn't grasp this was going to happen to me. And so I just said to him, I said, "Look, one thing that I hate on TV is when something starts and then all of a sudden it's just dropped for no reason whatsoever." And they had just the week before literally started a program with me and Alberto Del Rio, and they did this thing with him and Ray where he'd taken Ray out, and then I'd kind of come to Ray's defense, and I was starting this feud with Alberto. And so I just kind of said to him, "Look," I said, "I'm not sure what's going on here, but if we can maybe have him take me out, maybe that's the reason for me to be gone. Like, I just don't want to be gone for no reason."
Right.
All of a sudden, when we just, the last thing we see is me slapping this guy in the face and kind of him taking a powder and backing up the ramp away from me. That's the last thing you see from me for 6 months. Like, if we're going to do something with it, let's get him some heat. And then also on the flip side, when I come back, I have something to come back to. He's like, "Okay, well, look, you got to go back to the hospital regardless." So I got to get back to the hospital. We'll talk to the surgeon and see what he says. So we got back there, and I talked to Andrews, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's not going to get torn any worse than it is. It's as bad as it's going to get. If you can deal with the how irritating it is and the little bit of pain that you're going to have." He said, "I wouldn't wait any longer than 10 days. You're going to start having scar tissue, but if you want to wait another week and do something on TV, I'm completely fine with that." So that's what we did. So the next week I went up and we did a thing where he took me out, and the next day I went down, and a week later I had had surgery, and that was kind of the first one, and then I kind of went on a little string there of unlucky kind of like injuries. Like I had an ankle injury, which was a freak thing, and I was doing a baseball slide on a overseas tour. It was in that weird arena in Belgium, that had like the graffiti backstage, and it was like a really strange building, and they always had this like really big ramp where it was almost like a ladder you had to climb up to get to the curtain to walk down the ramp. And it was early on in the match. I was wrestling Sheamus at this baseball slide, and like I caught my toe, and I thought my bone came out of my leg. Like I felt something running down my leg, and so we finished the match. I got helped back up the ramp, and it was funny because Big Show was waiting for me at the top of the ramp, and I basically fell off the top onto his shoulder, and he carried me through these back halls to the trainer room, and I thought I was gonna pull my boot off and my bone was gonna be sticking out of my leg, and I took it off. Luckily, it wasn't. We went to some hospital somewhere, and there was like this kid looked like he was 11 years old. Like Doogie Howser was coming to give me my give me an assessment on my ankle. They do an X-ray, and they're like, "Can we get a copy of this?" So they bring out, Larry the trainer was with me, right? So So they came out and they hand him like this photocopied sheet of my X-ray, and we're looking at it, and we're both just staring at it. And I said, "Larry," he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "We're gonna get a second opinion on this, huh?" And he goes, "Yeah, I think so." And so I ended up flying home from that, and the doctor actually told me it would have been better if I just broke my leg because I had like this severe high ankle sprain, and it said it would have been much cleaner if I just broke it. And then from that, and then after that, I started getting like dinged. Like I got dinged a few times with my head, and I was going to see neurologists and things like that, and finally I had gotten a couple concussions, kind of, I would say within a few months of each other.
Now, how are you getting these concussions?
Just like, the first time it was actually, I caught Rey Mysterio on a body press, and I was doing this, because Rey's, like, he's so fun to work, right? Like he flies so high. Like I thought it'd be look super awesome if he was coming off the springboard body press, if I jumped into it and took it like in the air. And so when I jumped into it, I caught him a little high, and he landed on my head, and that knocked me out. So it just started from there, and then it was just, one was a kick, and another one was just I took a bump and hit the back of my head on the floor. It was just like, and then the neurologists were just kind of like, look, it's kind of like a boxer. You can be fine for years and years and years, but once you get that big one, it's almost like, it just becomes easier and easier to get them. At this point with you, it's almost like not if it's going to happen again, it's when is it going to happen?
Right.
So putting everything in perspective for me, it was, look, I just had a baby girl, and, I've accomplished a ton of things that I want. It wasn't like I was 31 or 29 or 30 or 31 years old where I still had so much ahead of me and all these things to accomplish. I was going to be 40 years old, and I'd done a lot, and I pretty much had accomplished everything I ever wanted to except, main event WrestleMania. But let's be honest, that doesn't happen for most people.
Right.
And present company excluded. Have both you guys, but hey, whatever. no big deal.
Going back to the pec surgery to reattach your pec. First of all, when someone says, "Hey man, we need you under the knife now," that's a heavy duty blow, and all of a sudden you can't, whether you've been cut or not, to get prepped for surgery, at a moment's notice is one thing, but to say, "Hey man, this is where I was in my storyline. I want to go out there and finish the storyline so we get some heat on Del Rio," and to me, man, that's the mark of a true pro. And that's first class. To try to take care of some business. Doc says, "Hey man, you're cool for another week, but we don't want to push it any more than that." So I got to give you props for that.
It was cool too, because Vince texted me after the surgery too, right? Like he texted me and said that he had been in contact and they told him it went well, and same thing, he just thanked me for my professionalism. I thought that was, that's stuff that motivates you to want to come back, to work harder to come back when you
Absolutely.
Get just a little message like that just goes a long way, right?
You guys both went to the same wrestling school, right?
Yeah, Ron Hutchison and Sweet Daddy Siki.
Now, where does the Dory Funk come into play in this, or did he not?
Well, he did, but we were both lucky in that throughout the years we kind of had people bestow some knowledge on us. The initial training was Ron and Siki in Toronto, and we both trained there. Then from there, I wrestled about 5 years, and then started making some headway with WWF, doing house shows in Hamilton and things like that. That's when they said, "Hey, we're doing this thing called the Funkin' Dojo down in Stamford. We want to bring you there. Get in with Tom Pritchard, get in with Dory Funk Jr., Bruce Pritchard is going to be there. Pat Patterson's going to be there. And this was the initial one that they'd ever done. And it was guys that they were interested in or guys that were on the roster that just needed some seasoning or grooming, or like Taka was there and to help with the language barrier with him, or Mark Henry, or, guys like that. So that's where that came into play. And then Jay, I think you did the second Funkin' Dojo, right?
Yeah, no, I think I was like in the third or fourth one. It was funny because Adam was under a developmental contract. I was not, and they had asked him to come to the pay-per-view. Actually, it was the Montreal pay-per-view with Brett and Sean, and they wanted you to come to the next set of TVs and do some dark matches and things like that. And you didn't have a car at the time, so I borrowed my mom's car. And wrestler rule: you never leave the house without your gear, brother. So I threw my bag in the trunk, and the TVs were in Ottawa, and then the next day they were in Cornwall, Ontario, because that was at the time when they did a live Raw and then a taped Raw the next night. So I'm in Cornwall, and I'm standing there, and somebody walks up to me and says, "Hey, did you bring your gear?" And I said, "Of course." And they said, "Oh, would you mind working with Adam in the in the dark match?" I was like, "Well, he's kind of the shits, but yeah, I guess I can get something out of him." And
I'll make him look good.
so we went out there, and it was a funny story too, because I'm wrestling in like these indie shows, and that building was small, right? Like, I mean, it probably held 4,500 people. Maybe 5,000 if you're lucky. And I remember coming out like, oh my God, this building is so big. Oh my God. And then years later, you go back and walk in like, why are we in this building? It's so small.
Territory's down.
Yeah.
And I remember too, like having this moment where it brings you back down to earth. It's like, okay, I'm wrestling my best friend from the 6th grade on. This is all we've ever dreamed of. We're wrestling the WWF. We're doing some cool stuff. And then they start testing the lights.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. That's why they call it a dark match.
Yeah. And then it was like, the ref had to finish. And the funny thing was that, we had to be like cognizant at the time of because, they're testing lights and they're about to go, start the show. So like, they're like, look, we could tell you to go at any time, and we thinking we're like so seasoned that, the ref's like, okay, you guys got to go. You got to go now. So we decided to, instead of just going to the finish that we had planned, we decided, well, let's just do this cool little finish. And the ref didn't know it was the finish. So he was pissed at us after. He's like, look, you can't just do that here. So we were like, but
it was Earl. It was Earl Hebner.
Yeah, it was Earl Hebner. Yeah. So we came back, and I remember because of all the stuff that had gone on, it was obviously a busy week with all the stuff that had gone on backstage and those sorts of things. But Jim Cornette watched the match, and he said, "God damn, guys, that was great. That was a great match." And then
that was the worst Jim Cornette impression I've ever heard.
let me try it again. God damn. No, I can't.
There you go. That's good there.
Just brutal.
God damn, guys, that was a great match. I can't do it.
That was better.
So I just happened to ask. I ran into him again before I left, and I asked him for his phone number. And then I was like, do you mind if I just drop you a line every now and again? He's like, yeah, please keep in touch. So every month or so, I would just call Jim and just tell him, hey, I just want to let you know where I am, where I'm working, what I'm doing, and this is what I've been up to. This is where I'm working, so I'm working with, and I'm keeping busy. So I would always just once a month I would call him and just let him just stay on the radar, And just out of the blue one night, I at that time I used to go to the gym, and it was about a half hour from my house. Still living at home with my parents, obviously before cell phones, and I wasn't cool enough or have enough money to have a pager. So I had to get my messages written down for me on a piece of paper, and they'd be on the kitchen table when I came home. So I came home late, like from the gym, like 11:30, 12 one night, and there was a message on my kitchen table that said Jim Cornette called. Call him back. Doesn't matter what time. I call back, and it goes to his voicemail. So now I'm starting leaving this message, and all of a sudden, he picks it up and goes, God damn, kid, where were you? I was trying to call you. And I said, oh, I said, Jim, I was at the gym. I was working out. He goes, oh, okay, that's all right then. And then he started telling me, hey, we're doing these, you've been aware that we're doing these training camps down at the office. And, he said, I remember the dark match that you had, and you've been calling me and telling me everything you're up to. And I think that you do really well at them. And I believe in you. And I think you do good. So I'm not sure when it's going to be, but I'm going to do my best to get you on one. So that was all the motivation I needed right there. I just was like balls to the wall there, just getting booked and just getting as much ring time, trying to be in the gym as much as I could. And sure enough, 2-3 months later, he called me up again. goddamn kid, I got you on one of these camps. And that was that. And then I went down, and there was a funny story too, because, I got a call saying, okay, we're going to bring you in, and, we're going to bring you in on a Saturday, and you'll start the camp. It went from Sunday to Sunday. It was funny because I had this booking in Delaware, and I used to work for this promotion, a guy named Jim Kettner in ECWA, and he treated me really well. And at the time, it was like my biggest payday. I was getting paid $150, and he flew me down to Philadelphia from Buffalo, New York, which is 90 miles from where we lived in Canada. So I would drive to Buffalo, and then I would fly down to Philly, and then drive the 20 minutes or whatever it was to Delaware to do these shows. And, I was like a main guy on his show. And when they wanted to fly me down for this camp, it was on the day of one of his big shows. So they called me and they started giving me all my travel info. And I was like, I said, I have a bit of an issue. And they're like, what's the issue? And I said, well, this promoter, Jim Kettner, that I work for, he treats me really well. And I'm one of the main guys on the show. And he advertises me and stuff like that. And I don't want to screw him over like last second and hurt his show. I'm not sure what to do here. And they said, well, hold on, we'll call you back. And they hang up, and I'm like, oh, my God, I think they're just going to be like, well, if something else is more important than WWE, then forget it, Like, now I'm like, oh, man, maybe I should have just said screw it and just not told them. Like, I was like, a million things running through your head, right? Like, oh, man, I just screwed my chance up. And then like 10, 15 minutes later, I got a call back, and they said, look, this is what we're going to do. First of all, Vince McMahon appreciates but like to keep their commitments. They said, what we're going to do is we're still going to fly you on the flight we have provided for you. We're going to get a car for you. The car is going to take you to your show. You'll do your show, jump back in the car, and I'll bring you back to the hotel, and you'll start the camp the next day. So that's what I did. I flew down, and they drove me down to Delaware, and I pulled an abdominal muscle in the match. Lucky for me. I went back, and I was in pain the entire week, but it was pretty cool because there was 12 guys there, and Bruce Pritchard and Dory Funk and JR pulled me aside like on the Friday, and they had offered me a developmental contract. So that was a pretty big week for me.
And I appreciate the backstory. And also just to point out, you went out of your way, or you took it upon yourself to give Jim Cornette a call. And of course, Jim Cornette's one of my favorite managers of all time, one of the greatest talkers in the history of the business. But you're making a relationship with a guy who knows a lot about the business, had a great run himself, and is connected. And then also, just like Vince told you, through someone else, they like people that honor their commitments. You weren't going to screw the promoter. So again, I got to give props to you there. And you talked briefly about Dory, and just from watching you guys over the year, both outstanding workers, athletic style, fast moving stuff. With respect to your body types, both about 6'1", 6'4", on the leaner side, working pro style, very athletic. What did you take away from Dory Funk Jr.? Because my point is, back in the day, when I first started watching wrestling, I was a big Ric Flair guy, loved Dusty, and then Dory would come on, and sometimes Dory's matches could kind of grind down. He was so scientific. And at that stage of my career, I really couldn't appreciate what he was doing. It wasn't until I'd been in the business for a couple of years that I could see, in my opinion, the genius of what Dory Funk Jr. was doing. Just his wrestling, how good it looked, how snug he was, how deliberate he was. I was the biggest Dory Funk Jr. fan in the world. So with respect to y'all's fast-moving style, what were y'all able to take away from Dory Funk Jr. that would impact or help your career?
It's interesting, because at first, it was before I got to WWE, I was never really a high flyer or anything like that. I was really...
No, I'm not calling you a high flyer. I'm just, a fast-moving athletic guy.
Well, yeah, but even still, like I didn't initially do a whole lot. I really tried to keep it. It was just we trained in a ring where you couldn't go off the top rope because the ceiling was too low, and it was a boxing ring. So that stuff didn't really get onto my radar until we started working the Hardys, and it was like, okay, now we can do this stuff, I guess. We just haven't really had an opportunity before. So Dory was just kind of another layer of foundation, because with Ron and Siki, they really taught us that like the biggest thing they taught us was a drop kick. But we had to...
Y'all were grounded in psychology and just being ground-based.
Yeah, we had to drill hammerlock to headlock, back to headlock. We were just switching holds and wrestling for like a year before they even contemplating contemplated letting us have a match or think about a sunset flip or anything like that. From there, it was just get out on shows, and then you'd try stuff on a show. So it'd be like a crossbody off the top was kind of like a big thing. And then little by little, it'd just like add layers here and there. After that, the next kind of, I guess, schooling that I had was out at Brett's place, at Bret Hart's place, because he was down with a knee scope, and he was champion at the time, and it was Carl DeMarco said you should go out and see Bret. So I went out there, and I worked a little bit with him, and he said, okay, well, we got to get everybody looking at you because you're ready. Then I went out, did some more tours, went out again. This time Jay came with me. And then we both went out there, kind of sat under Brett's learning tree for a little bit. And then from there, it was the Funkin' Dojos with Dory. So we really got super lucky with the brains that we were able to pick and like just listen to. And then beyond that, we were wrestling guys like Rick Martel and Bad News Brown and these seasoned guys that for whatever reason just saw these two young kids that were willing to listen and not just do the, can you give me some advice and then just do something the opposite. We actually would sit and listen to what these guys had to say and then try and implement it and not just let it roll off our backs like we knew better or something,
But let me jump in here because Jay, a while ago, you said when you guys wrestled each other, it was right after the screw job, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, and so now, Adam, Brett has called you down to the house. This is before the screw job, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so, obviously, Brett handpicked me, I think it was 95 or 96, for his comeback match in Madison Square Garden. And I flew down to Calgary, and we talked a little bit and visited. And, of course, Brett was always a big influence on me and a guy that I just absolutely have the highest respect for, just him as a person and what he can do in the ring and our trust level and respect level for each other. Just to talk about the screw job for a second, from you guys kind of just being on the outside, what were y'all's thoughts of what had just happened in this company that I guess, Adam, you're a part of, and Jay, you're fixing to be a part of? Or what were y'all thinking at the time when all this shit went down? Because it was heavy duty.
Yeah, well, the thing is, we decided that we wanted to watch this match in the crowd. And we had been backstage the entire day, so we kind of found this little side. It was in Montreal, right? So they had these, like, from the locker rooms there, you could walk out into the through these doors, and you could stand in kind of an aisleway off the floor a little bit, but you had a straight shot to the rings. So we walked down one of those and watched it out in the crowd, so to speak. I remember when the finish happened, it didn't really register at the time. I just looked at Adam and I said, that was kind of strange, wasn't it? That was a weird finish. He's like, and then we walk in and all of a sudden we just see people rushing around and running around in a bunch of commotion. And we didn't really know what was, like, we didn't understand. We couldn't grasp it, like what had just gone down. We didn't know until actually like the next day, really, what had happened.
Yeah, it was a strange time, man. I just remember, again, DeMarco came up to me and said, yeah, you should go. I went, yep, okay, I'll go. And we grabbed our bags and we left. And then, yeah, the next day I think was Ottawa. And that's where, we were the last to get that kind of word because I'm on a developmental. It's not like I really know anybody yet. But word got around and I just remember thinking, whoa, okay, this is a game changer. And Brett helped me get here. So how does that all fall out now? Is it just, because I'm looked at as a Brett guy, am I going to be gone too? Is Owen going to be gone? How does this shake out? I remember talking to Brett and Brett said, you do what you got to do. Don't worry. He goes, worst case scenario, I can put in a word with you in WCW. But I'd always wanted to get to the WWF. And I felt like that was the place where I was going to get a shot. And be able to show, because WCW at that point, you know what it was like. I mean, you were there. It was just not the place for me. I didn't think. I thought with WWF, man, it was young and it was hip and it was vibrant and it just felt like things were taking off and you were taking off and. There's Sean, and it just felt like the place that I wanted to be. But it was a weird time for sure.
Man, it was weird because, man, Davey Boy was going crazy. Owen was going crazy. I mean, that whole backstage thing. And I was around, but I wasn't catching all of it. And then there was a famous thing where, Vince was going to walk into the dressing room and, at least say something to Brett, give him his shot. I think Brett took the shot. It was just weird because coming out of that, I was like, man, what is going to happen to this company? Brett was our world champion. Again, I'm a huge Shawn fan, but Brett was the guy at that time. And so I was thinking, man, this company's going downhill. You can't fire your world champion because it was still like a shoot. I mean, we've all known it's a work, but at that level, it's a shoot. And I just, I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought the territory was going to go down.
Yeah, I remember thinking that too. Because hey, that just happened to the flagship guy. So how does a locker room have any trust now? If you're going to do that to Bret Hart, how can that not happen, the chance of that happening to everybody else? Obviously, there's more that goes into it. There's different sides of stories and all of those things. But I remember thinking that, like, okay, this is where I want to be, but this might be a weird place to be for a long time if there's still a place to be.
You're listening to another classic episode of The Steve Austin Show, only on PodcastOne.
This is The Steve Austin Show.
I want to talk to you guys about, and obviously you spoke of some of the wear and tear on your bodies. And man, this past, for the last day, I've been watching ladder matches, table ladder, chair matches, with you guys, the Dudleys, Matt and Jeff Hardy. And, when I'm kind of doing a little bit of research or just reading about ladder matches, I guess, across the world or in England or in the United States, there were a few ladder matches in the 1970s. It wasn't like the WWF invented them. Bret and Shawn had actually had one on a challenge show, I guess pre-94. But the Shawn Razor match from 1994, that match put that type of match on the map. It was just an outstanding match, great psychology, and it was the building block for ladder matches to come. So my question is to you, I guess, in all of my notes right here, I don't have the date in which y'all had your first ladder match or tables, ladders, chairs match. What were your thoughts when someone said, hey man, you guys are in this match?
It was actually our pitch.
Really?
And this was the first thing that we had ever pitched, storyline wise. And it was strictly a thing to get noticed. We were kind of floating between being on Raw and being on Heat, or, whatever the kind of secondary shows were. Sometimes we show up, we'd be on Heat, sometimes we'd be on Raw, but we're just kind of, trying to get our footing. And we just were all, like you just mentioned the Razor Shawn match, and that was like the measuring stick for us. Like that was a match that kind of changed things for all of us in a sense. And we're all talking, and we were working a lot on the live events, and we were just like, just kind of spitballing, like, how can we take this to another level? Like, how can we really stand out here? And, it wasn't going to happen, any other way, because the card was stacked. You had you in your prime, The Rock in his prime, Taker, Triple H, Mick Foley, like all these huge stars, like at once. We know we weren't getting anywhere near the top of the card as singles guys. So like, how do you stand out? How do you get a spot every week on the show that's a highlighted slot in a good position, and how do you get on every pay-per-view, and how do you become an important cog in the wheel that needs to be there, or else it doesn't run as smoothly, And so we kind of just were throwing different things around, and we kind of had said, well, what if we do a best of 7 match, and every match is a different stipulation, and it ends with the first ever tag team ladder match. And when we pitched it, we obviously said, there needs to be something hanging above the ring, and we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, because neither of our teams had been tag champs or even close to it, I think, at that point. They said, but maybe there needs to be a title or something there, but something needs to be hanging visually for us to grab to win. And that's when they kind of came up with the idea of doing the Terry Invitational Tournament, where the winner got $100,000 in Terry Runnels' managerial services. So it was kind of like this tournament thing that she had put on with this best of 7, and that's kind of how it came about. And we just knew that this was kind of going to be hopefully our springboard into becoming, and I think Matt Hardy said at one point, it took us from being WWE wrestlers to WWE superstars, and that was what we were trying to do.
So what was the thought process, just as far as creating that first one to, going on to the 3 that I focused on was the one in, I guess it was TLC 1, which was SummerSlam, TLC 2, which had been, WrestleMania 16 or 17? 17. And WrestleMania 16 and 17, according to Pro Wrestling Illustrated, those table ladders chairs matches with yourselves, Hardys, and Bubba Ray and Devon were matches of the year. And, dude, I'll never forget, I was rewatching a little bit of WrestleMania 17 just last night, getting ready to talk to you guys, and went ahead and watched that ladder match, and that was, Jesus Christ, that thing was unbelievable. It was just super exciting, and I was thinking, because at the building, I didn't watch the match. I've seen the match, probably 2 or 3 times on YouTube or WWE Network, but then I watched it again last night, and it was just like, off the chart timing, danger, thrills, chills, spills. I mean, you both everybody took incredible bumps. And to think, after that, Triple H goes out there to work with Undertaker and they have a really good match. And I remember, if you guys remember in the arena before that show started, Motorhead was going to play Triple H's entrance song and they were out there doing a rehearsal. And holy smokes, man, I've always been a Motorhead fan, but that speed metal, they weren't real bassy. With Triple H's song, it was bass heavy, and it was Lemmy, and they struck up that chord, at rehearsal. I was like, chills went down my spine. And so that night at the show, this is after y'all's match, man, all of a sudden Motorhead starts, and Lemmy says, we're Motorhead, and we're going to kick your ass. And boy, they just launch into that version of Triple H's song. And man, he starts singing. He had that microphone cranked up real high and had his neck craned back. And they sing for about 45 seconds, maybe a minute. Finally, here comes Triple H. And he does his entrance and he comes down. And boy, if you look at Lemmy while they're playing, and those guys played for 4 or 5 minutes, and Lemmy's just grooving. I'm sure he's probably high as a kite, but it was just awesome. I was watching how great the entrance was, and I think when I look back, I think that was probably my favorite entrance anybody has ever made in the history of the business. And now Triple H is kind of famous for his big entrances at WrestleManias, but that one right there in 17, just because of how awesome, raw, and badass Motorhead was, and he was on a real streak at the time, was incredible. And so anyway, they would have that match, and of course, The Rock and I were the main event. There were 65,000 people there. After watching you guys totally destroy the place, the ring, everybody in that damn match, I'd forgotten what a huge task it was to try to follow the match that you guys had.
I think WrestleMania 17, everything's subjective, right? But to me, that's the best card and the best pay-per-view ever. And just because of the totality of it, from opening match to last match, everything delivered.
And everybody got off. I mean, because sometimes things don't click. Dude, everybody that went out that night clicked.
Yeah, and that can be so rare, And, our mentality when we did the first ladder match with the Hardys, our mentality was always, we don't want anybody to be able to follow this. We know that we don't have the promo abilities yet of the guys on top. We don't get those reactions yet, but we want to get there. And what we can do to do that is now start taking these risks that honestly, like I said, Jay and I didn't really take up until that point. We decided, hey, if we want to get noticed in this land of these industry giants, that when you look back now, probably the most stacked roster of all time, right. How do you stand out in that? Like, how? Okay, well, we'll pitch a ladder match and we'll do the first tag team ladder match. So we got carte blanche. It's an empty canvas. So we can paint whatever we want on this. And, sometimes first evers like the Kennel from Hell match or something are not good. But with a tag team ladder match, we knew it could be good. So we really just did whatever we could think of for that match. And then the Dudleys came over. And the Dudleys added an aspect that Edge and Christian and the Hardys didn't have. They added that kind of that badass. I've always said, if you listen to the reactions of our matches, Jay and I would come out and get booed. Great, we're the heels. Right. The Hardys would get that Rock and Roll Express.
Oh, dude, at 17, they blew the roof off. Go ahead.
Yeah. And then the Dudleys would get that guttural guy from Philly pop.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that mixture of those three is exactly what was needed to make those matches work. We caught lightning in a bottle, and our goal, all six of us, and then when you add in Spike and Lita and Rhino, it was just our goal was to go out and go, okay, if somebody's going to follow us, they're going to have to really kick ass tonight.
Yeah.
I think that was the whole roster's mentality then.
You know, it was funny too, Steve, because like on the first, with the first ladder match that we did against the Hardys, we were told to have 3 finishes, and one was us winning, one was them winning, and one was me kind of turning on Edge and costing us the match. So they just put the Hardys one, and then there was some rumblings of at that early on of us maybe even splitting up and doing something, which made me pretty nervous because, you know, I was still trying to find my footing and find out what I was character-wise. I didn't really have a character. So, you know, no promo time, all those things. I was like, man, and I remember being on an remember we used to do those, the Europe-only pay-per-views back around that time? So we used to go over on the charter planes, right? And you and I were standing, enjoying a glass of red wine somewhere in the plane, and you kind of just said to me, just turned and just frankly said to me, hey, what are these rumblings I hear about them maybe breaking you guys up? And I said, I don't know. I said, that's just, I've been hearing the same thing. He goes, and you said, you got to put a stop to that. And I went, well, I mean, I'd never really had those conversations before with anybody, so I don't know how to do it kind of thing. And you're like, listen, you guys are the team. You know, you guys are the top team. And you're going to be factored in. You're going to be everything that kind of we want, like that I was just saying. You know, we had a spotlight. We were the main team. And right out of your mouth, you said, look at the top of the card. The singles guys, you aren't going to get there. You'll get there eventually one day, but it's not going to be anytime soon. You need to ride this out as long as you can because it's working and it's good. And whatever you got to do, stop it. You got to stop it. And that's kind of when we had kind of started spitballing about turning from these kind of this double babyface thing we've been doing with the Hardys to, and then there was luckily Brian Gewirtz, who was our age and was a young writer and was trying to find his way, and another guy named Tommy Blacha. You know, we had been kind of talking with those guys and maybe exploring like, hey, what if we turned heel here and actually started to talk and have some personality? And then that changed everything for us. Once we got on commentary for one match, we started doing it with a heel edge, no pun intended, but we started like just having a little bit more attitude. We did this thing backstage where we did a sit-down interview with the Hardys. Like the coach was kind of interviewing both of us, and the writer said, "Just say whatever you want, and if you swear, we'll bleep it out. Just give us something real." So we went out there and we were dropping F-bombs, and we were just like like just everything you could think of. And like they're like, if you watch it back, it's like bleep 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 bleep. And we're just like, we rip our microphones off and we get up and we walked out, just like impromptu. We walked out, and that kind of from that, like, whoa, hold on a second here. There's a different dynamic to these guys that we haven't explored yet. Maybe they're not done as a team. And that was when it kind of started to roll in a different direction.
One thing that stands out, like you guys knew that you needed to do something to stand out from the crowd. I mean, you look at the roster, it was a stacked roster. And like I told you on that airplane, and I'm glad you reminded me of that conversation, you know, that was straight up. I mean, there was nowhere to go. You know, I've told this story many times, but just to spread the 411 or put a bug in someone's ear, you know, I remember having a conversation with Vince when they were editing my lines on the Raws that weren't live, and I knew I needed to separate myself from everybody, and I knew, well, exactly like I told Vince, walking across the parking lot in Lowell or Worcester, Mass, wherever it was, I said, hey, Vince, I said, you got a second? He went, sure, pal. And I said, hey, man, I noticed when you guys are, you know, I'm watching Monday Night Raw, you guys are editing out a lot of things I say. I just want to know why that is. And, you know, I was supposed to be a heel at the time. And he goes, well, quite frankly, Steve, you're popping all the guys in the truck. And you guys know if you're popping everybody in the truck, you can pop the world. So I told him, similar to what you guys did, I just said, hey, man, I said, I'm 6'1", 250, bald head, goatee, black trunks, black boots. I said, Vince, if you take my personality from me, I can't compete. But if you give me my personality, I can compete with anything you got. That was my MO of doing exactly kind of what you guys did, you know, with the ladder matches and all that other stuff. And now taking another risk here with being, you know, a little overboard on the mic, to go back to the ladder match or the TLC match or however you guys want to go about this process. Well, let's talk about 17 specifically, because that was so lights out. And Lita, yeah, like you said, Rhino, Lita, Spike, the bumps that all of y'all took, and Lita was so cool back in the day. I mean, when she come down and she kind of had that high G-string thong thing on her pants, she had that cool factor. She was like punk, cool, sexy, and of course she was badass. She was a great worker. Spike comes down, hits both of you guys with his finish. Jay, you both took some crazy bumps, safe bumps. But that, whatever his finish is called, off the apron, through that table, and then, here comes Rhino, and then, who was he? Was that, Jay, was that you on his shoulders to get that belt?
Yeah, he put me on the shoulders. And it was a funny story because when we were at the building the night before, just going over, just tying up some loose ends, just kind of, because it's different when you're in that. It sounds strange, but it's true. When you're in that big of a space, it's sometimes timing can be an issue.
Oh,
and so we're just trying to get some timing down on some certain things, and we're all laying there kind of talking about it after. Everyone's kind of sitting there and said, "Hold on a second, Jay, you don't have any offense in this match. We need to rethink some stuff." I was like, "Hell no." I was like, "I don't want any." I said, "Rhino's carrying me up at the end. I'm grabbing the titles. That's all the heat I need."
But that's a great thought. But put me in a room with you guys when you're trying to lay this thing out, because literally, you're just watching the match. If there's any calls, it's all protected, and you guys have set this thing up. But it's not like you're getting any run-throughs, man. This was 17. It's a whole lot different than what's going on. So obviously you've had experience, you've worked with these guys a couple of times. There's got to be a super high level of trust, and it looked like you guys are just, everything's being laid in, but you're taking care of each other, and there's a high level of trust. When you got 6 guys, and then you have these 3 other components coming in to contribute to this match, which was totally off the charts. How you guys go about setting this thing up? You do this, I'm going to do that, and just how the process goes, because there's down periods after big bumps, action periods, different guys trying to ascend up, get those belts. I've never had a match like that. I had a ladder match with Vince and Shane one time. It was adrenaline shits. As soon as they told me we're going to have a ladder match, I'm thinking like step ladders, right? Because, I didn't need to be off the ground. So, I've never been involved in anything like this. So you take me through that process. And who commands the floor?
We realized if it was going to have any lasting power, and if people were going to stay engaged and wanted to see these matches, we couldn't just let them be car crashes, which maybe a couple of the early ones were. They were just kind of everything really, it sounds weird, but we were trying to get some psychology in these matches, like a reason to actually do certain things, not just like, well, why is he setting up a chair here when everybody's over there? Like, you're trying to make everything logical why you're doing certain things, and that was the challenge. So a lot of times, and you have 6 guys in there with all that have ideas and are creative guys and feel strongly that their opinions are the right ones. So there were times where, we'd be in arguments about stuff, and it wasn't coming from a place of anybody being mad at each other. It was a place of passion where we all cared so much about this that we were willing to argue our points. And then at the end of it, we'd figure it out how to make everybody's ideas work. And then we'd go out there, and like you said, no matter where we were at back there, we had 100% trust in each other. And, that's also a lifelong bond that we're all going to have together too, I think.
Yeah, there were times when we'd butt heads, but it was always to try and get what we all felt was going to be best. And that can be tough with 6 people to try and get this, unanimous thing. It wasn't going to be that way. And the chemistry of the teams, the way it kind of worked is Matt would be the talking guy for the Hardys and mostly the idea guys, and it was Bubba for the Dudleys. For us, it was both Jay and I, where we would both come to the table with a lot of ideas and a lot of, and Jeff and Devon just aren't wired that way, and that was fine. Jeff would come up with a massive idea, and then we would go, okay, how can we work this in? How can we have this try and make some semblance of sense? And then we also had Michael Hayes as our agent, and he's a huge part of it too, man, because we would all just sit down and just throw these ideas at the wall and see what stuck or resonated with the majority of us anyway, and then try and appease everybody and make it work. But like Jay said, try to have things make sense, but at the same time, I wanted those things to look like a tornado had been through a trailer park after. Like, to me, the best visual is after WrestleMania 17. Just take a look at the ring. Take a look at the bodies everywhere. Take a look at the ladders that are broken, the tables destroyed. All right, mission accomplished. That's what it needs to look like after this match. And I've said it repeatedly. I think we all went too far. We really did. But that it was our mentality of just trying to get noticed. And then once we went far, then we had to one up ourselves, because then it was like, well, now we're going to do TLC 2. And now we're, and it's like, okay, now what do we do? How do we top this again?
And I'll tell you this too, Steve, like the real challenge is not even so much the ladder match stuff, but it's there's a real fine line of being labeled just guys that do gimmick matches. That when you go out to do a proper match and you go out to put some time in and you're trying to tell a story and take people on the ride, where it's like, well, he's not going through a table, or he's not getting hit with a chair, he's not falling off a ladder, I'm not really interested. It's like there's a fine line there where you have to be able to separate that, hey, these guys can go when they're not falling off stuff. So that was a challenge as well.
Oh, dude, you're 100% correct, because, I mean, you can book yourself into a corner, but then, like you said, once you guys said, hey, man, let's keep this thing together, you started coming up with kind of the heel swing and the attitude as we were right on the back end of that era. You became more character-based rather than, hey, man, there's a lot of guys you can go out there, or not a lot of guys, but some guys that do get labeled as, hey, man, if this guy's got to work a straight match, it's not going to be so good because he's a gimmick match guy.
Yeah, and that was one of the things we knew with our promo work and our character work and just our, the 5-second poses and things like that. It's like, okay, this is what can now make us different. Those matches proved that we can do all that stuff. So if you put us in any situation, whether it's just a straight up tag team match, which was our personal favorite, is just, give us 20 minutes with a great tag team and let us do what a tag team match can do if it's done right. But if you need a TLC match, okay, we can do that too. We wanted to be like that multi-tooled team, that you could put into any situation. We worked The Rock and Undertaker and for the titles, and then we'd do a TLC match, and then we'd work the APA, and then we'd work Too Cool. And then we just wanted to be that team that you could plug into any situation and we could get what you needed done for you.
I was just gonna say, backing up to when you were talking about what I learned from Dory, and there was something there, like when I was in his class, there was kind of a thread with me and him that whenever he wanted to demonstrate something, he would pull me aside and demonstrate something for the class. Whenever there was something that he wanted done with, a certain different size, because there was all different sizes of guys, and there was monsters in there. There was guys that were 6'4", there was guys that were smaller than me, there were guys that were my size. The majority of the time he was asking me to do a short match with this person or do a spot or do something like that. So in my head I was like, well, there's a reason for this. And one of the things I learned was, at our size, I might not necessarily be great at one thing, but I need to be good at everything. And that was kind of what I took away from him. And that's one of the tools that I use going forward, that at my size, I really had to be able to adapt to any style that I was in the ring with. And that was what I took away from him.
In that match, it looked, I might be getting, it might have been the match, it might have been the year before when Bubba Ray put the ladder over his head, started spinning it into everybody. It looked like he took a pretty good shot there. Jay, did you get dinged on that?
No, I didn't actually. It was, I just, I got my hands up last second and took a little snap bump. So, and luckily too, with the long hair, you could kind of, you get away with a lot more with the long hair, right? You just throw the hair back and it gave the illusion that, something. And the big thing is sound, right? Like sometimes if something is hitting something like a chair or a ladder, when you got bumped, and if it rattles or makes a noise, that will resonate not only to the front row, to the middle of the arena, but to the top of the arena, and that people react to that. So, I think that too with the sound of the smack and the hair whipping back, I think it just, it was always made for really cool moments.
Adam, did you come out of those things unscathed with regards to your neck? Because, I mean, both of you took some crazy bumps, and Jay, you missed, or I guess was intentional, on that triple ladder spot in the middle. But Adam, did you come out of these things okay, or did they contribute to, your neck issues?
I mean, at the time I thought I did, but if I really trace it back, I think that has to be where it started. Whether it was the way I bumped a little bit higher up. So now you're bumping a little bit higher up, but you're doing it off ladders. I don't know. It's tough to fully pinpoint because at the time, your hands would be bruised, your elbows would be bruised, your joints would be sore just from taking the ladders and the chairs and the tables. But it was just stuff like that. And I watched them back and I'm like, how did one of us not die with some of the stuff that we were able to pull off?
Straight up.
Because the margin for error, man, it was hair thin. And the fact that we all came out of it without something happening that night during a spot, it's still kind of incomprehensible to me, to be honest. What happened was, though, is you see throughout the years that those definitely, put some notches on our belts in terms of injuries, because by the time I was starting to really get into my groove as a singles, things were starting to crop up now. And I think it started with those matches.
It's funny you said in that 17 match, there was a spot where I was getting tipped off the ladder and I was going to go over the ropes and land on the floor. And I'd done it before, and it's visually looks pretty crazy, but I would go over the ropes and I would step over and land on my feet and kind of roll on the floor. So in this particular case, somehow the ladder kicked on me as it was getting tipped. And instead of going over feet first, my feet swung up, and I actually went over the ropes kind of back first.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at the ceiling going, oh, my God, this is not going to be good. And I basically flat-backed on the floor from off the ladder in the middle of the ring. And I don't know how I didn't land on a piece of debris on a ladder on something that would have done some serious damage. Right. I happened to land perfectly on a spot that had nothing, and I flat-backed it, and it knocked the fucking wind out of me. I couldn't breathe. But I was laying there, I'm like, move my arm a little bit. Okay, I can move my arm. Okay, I can move my legs. Oh, my God, I'm all right. How did that happen? And so I get my breath back, and I come to the back, and Kane is walking past me, and he stops me. He's like, are you okay? And I'm like, from what? He's like, that bump, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. And he grabs me by the shoulder, spins me, pushes me up against the wall. And he goes, you scared the shit out of me. Don't ever do that again. And he walked away. So, I almost got more hurt from Kane than I did from the bump.
I think back too, like there were little things that would, like, I remember I was lying on a table and I think Bubba picked up Jeff and powerbombed him through the table, but it was a little bit short. And if you watch it back, basically just the back of Jeff's head hits my arms, and I try to reach to try and grab him a little bit, but that one knocked him out for a little bit. And I remember that. And that's well before we still got to do the crazy, hanging spear.
Yes.
So, you just kind of, we all had trust, and we all, knew that stuff was going to happen, but it'd all come out in the wash eventually, and we'd get through it.
You know, it's funny too. You don't realize too, like with moments like that, and like WrestleMania is about making moments, right? And like, that's what we do anyway. But, and I know this didn't happen at Mania for you, but you think about the beer truck, right? Like that's a moment that's replayed, and it's iconic, right? And the same thing with that spear spot. We didn't realize at the time when we're setting it up, and if I did, I would have volunteered to be the one doing the spot if I'd known that it was going to be so iconic. But but it's one that's in any video package, hyping WrestleMania or WWE, you see that spot where Adam spears Jeff Hardy off the ladder. He's dangling from the ring in the middle, trying to grab the titles, and Edge dives across and spears him off, and you just see people standing up, and you see the lights flash, and you see the bump that Jeff takes. It's that's one of those moments, and like thinking about it now, we didn't know at the time that there was going to be stuff like that, and it's really cool. Like a lot of times too, like I just did like a signing last week in France, and you still have like little kids that weren't even born yet coming up and telling you they love the ladder matches, they love the TLC matches, and their parents are still showing them these things, and that's cool.
I'll never forget, we were working the Highway to Hell match in Madison Square Garden. It was myself versus Undertaker. I got knocked out early on in the match. I don't remember the rest of the match, but I kept going in the match, and the match was average. But at one point, we'd planned a little spot where I was going to be out on the announce table. Taker was going to go up top and drop a big leg on me. So, we talked about it, and now all of a sudden I'm laying on the table. I'm looking up. First of all, Taker's 7 feet tall. Then he's on top of the turnbuckle, and I'm the target. And I'm thinking, well, I guess we're going to do it after all. And all of a sudden, here comes Taker. And that's a high-risk move, but it's certainly not as high risk as what, the totality of this match you guys had at 17. But the point I'm trying to get to, Edge, take me through where you were, because there's a lot of timing going on there. It's not like you guys got a chance to practice this. Jeff's hanging. Who's that? Bubba? Was that Devon? I think it was.
That was Bubba that was pulling him back.
Okay, Bubba was pulling back with the chair, and he had to get the proper release with his feet, and then there you are on the ladder. Take me through that, just as far as, hey, what the F? Here I go.
Yeah, that was really it. What I was really trying to pay attention to was what rung I needed to jump from for the trajectory to work. And if I'm third rung down, that should, in a perfect world, have us making contact right at the moment where I'm picturing it, at least in my head. Now, if you watch it back, though, I almost committed too soon. There's just a short little like whoop, and I held, and the ladder didn't tip, thankfully. And like a nanosecond later, I went. And if I had gone on that first initial instinct, it would have been horribly. You would have whiffed wrong.
Well, the thing about it was, if you would have over-rotated, you're going to plant him on the back of his head right in the middle of the ring. Or if you under-rotate, you're going to plant him on his lower back or sack. And that's going to jack him up because of the whip and the blow to the lower back. I mean, so, dude, the fact that he landed completely flat, I mean, that was about as perfect of a landing as you could have hoped for or stuck.
Well, and that goes back to the trust. You know, Jeff is just one of those guys who's very giving in there, and he will bump his ass off and sell his ass off to make people look good. So I knew if I could hit this properly and protect him, he was going to make this thing look like $1 trillion because he trusted me. And I didn't want to, you know, you'd never want to hurt anybody, but especially with something like that where it could go so horribly wrong. I was like, I have to hit this perfect. And I didn't even realize in watching it back, like when I hit him, I grab onto him and I hold him and release him right before we hit the mat. And that's just one of those things you don't think about doing. Your instincts in there just naturally do it. And, we made it through. But that initial instinct to jump almost really, it wouldn't have been replayed.
Right before that, wasn't that when Jeff and D-Bomb were up there fighting? Like, and then D-Bomb got knocked off? Was it that one?
No, that was at SummerSlam.
Okay.
That was at SummerSlam. Right. And this is when Jeff tried to do the Frogger, as we called it.
Yes, right.
And jump from ladder to ladder to get to the belts.
Yeah.
And then from there, and it didn't work. But it was okay that it didn't work. It almost made it better because it made it look real.
Right. Well, it ended up just scaling back up. But when you guys look back at all those matches, what one was your personal favorites?
Oh, man.
I'm going to do the 17 was, to me, the ones I watched, it was just spectacular. I don't know how you top that. That's from me, we're looking from an outsider standpoint.
I think 17 was my favorite because of the stage that it was on, and also because the SummerSlam one, TLC won, and then there was the triple ladder match at WrestleMania 16. To me, TLC 1 was just so much in so little time. We didn't give anybody a chance to breathe, and that was by design. But it was, I don't know, Mania just, it still felt like people, there was always action going on, but it was just able to be digested better. And I think because it's the one that has packages played from it or spots played from it in WrestleMania packages, that to me is the one that I think stands out.
I think for me, I think the same thing. The first one with the Hardys kind of holds a special place for me just because it was our launching pad. Like, I don't know where either of us would have ended up if that match never happened. And if we didn't hit it out of the park on that one, you can bet we wouldn't have got another chance to do it. So there was a lot of pressure on that one. But I think as far as the overall match itself, I would think that the 17 one was, and for another reason is after Kevin Dunn, I had a conversation with him after that match, and he said, realistically with these type of matches, you think about it, and you shouldn't be able to tell a story, but you guys are now telling stories with these matches, and that's a testament to the talent of everybody involved, and that always kind of held a special place to me that he acknowledged that,
When I watched those matches, it was interesting because I believe I watched them in chronological order, or I watched, I think I did. But what I noticed was, and I believe they all started with a jump start. It just looked in 17 like you guys, as you were making your way to the ring, like you had been there and done that. And I thought your work in the previous 6 months to a year or a year and a half out, it was still at a very high level. I just thought that everybody looked more comfortable. Everybody was ready for the stage. And that was a built show. I mean, that crowd was crazy. But just you guys, everybody making their way to the ring, it just looked like everybody had another year and a half of seasoning. And to me, that always made makes the difference in a professional presentation, no matter how scientific or how crazy you're trying to get. It's pro wrestling.
And I think that was just it. Like by that point, we had some moxie to us, and some swagger to us. Whereas, as much as I love the ladder match with the Hardys because it did put us all on the map, it was still that, okay, we're 4 guys here. We're trying to prove something. By WrestleMania 17, we already felt like we'd proved something and we knew it. That being said, with that first ladder match, the tag ladder match with the Hardys, that was the first time they did the camera above the ring. So,
yep.
And it was really the first moment that as performers, I remember hearing a groundswell of a reaction I'd never heard before. So, I mean, that holds a special place because that's where the wave started. But by WrestleMania 17, man, it felt like a tsunami. It was just, and it felt like we were riding it too.
One of those things too, where like I said, everybody was on the same page and clicked. It wasn't like, oh man, Edge and Christian are winning this one again, man. Like it's bullshit. We should be winning this one. Like it wasn't like that. We were different teams, but we were all a team in a sense. Like it didn't matter. The goal was to go out there and make a match that stood the test of time and to steal the show. And it didn't matter who was winning. It didn't matter, who was taking more bumps or getting more offense. That didn't matter. We were out there to do one thing, and that was to put on the best show we could.
Oh, dude, that's the thing. It doesn't matter who would have won the belt. You guys retained or won them. Did you retain or win them?
I think we retained in the first one, or we won in the first in 16, and then we retained at SummerSlam, and then I think we won them again in 17.
Okay, so you won them at 17, but my point is, it really doesn't matter who won. And at the end, of course, it did. But my point is going back to exactly what you said, man. As long as the whole match is just a badass match, and everybody gets some of something, everybody gets over. The crowd, is so involved and so enamored and thrilled by the match that everybody gets over, and it's good for everyone. No one has to be selfish. It was about the belt because you put yourself through all this, carnage and damage to try to get the belt, and that's what the belt means to you. But whoever would have won it still would have been the same match, and it's just a case of, everybody going out there and working their ass off and not being selfish or giving a shit who's going to win or having a boo-boo face, I'm dropping the title.
Yeah, I think our mentality was, and all of us was, we all walk away from this stronger than when we went in.
Absolutely.
No matter who has what. The Hardys will go on and be, the babyface tag team that can work you and Triple H. And the Dudleys will be the tag team that can go work, Kane and Undertaker. And then eventually Jay and I will split and we'll do our singles thing. And it all stems from, that whole series of matches where, basically where we got noticed.
What were you guys, before we wrap this thing up, and I'd like to come back and talk to you guys again about, the rest of your run as a tag, getting that 5-second pose, establishing some of your character traits, and then the split, because, the split, all of a sudden you're cruising along in a tag team, all of a sudden you split and you go back into a singles role, because I've been there, done that, complete lack of confidence, and it's almost like you don't know the shit around your watch, and you might have been working however many years, but you don't have that safety cushion, you're not on the, you're not ad-libbing or going, off what the guy has done before you, so it's a real lesson. But let me ask you one last thing. Coming back from that match, you guys get together, you always say thank you after a match, but boy, after something like that, when there could have been so much carnage, there was such a high margin for error, and you pull it off spectacularly. A couple things come up short, but I mean, in the scope of things, just a 10 out of 10. What are your feelings? What are people telling you? Did you get a stand-up in Gorilla? And is there what's the big hug in the back? Because, dude, when you knock one out of the park, it's at a very high stage, the highest stage of them all, WrestleMania, and you crush it. What were you guys feeling the next day or right after the match?
It was a weird one, honestly, because of the way the Astrodome was. And as we talked about earlier, sometimes there's a delay. Yeah, there's not that instantaneous kind of gratification where okay, that worked, because the sound has to go up, hit the roof, and bounce back to you. So while we were out there, we talked about it afterwards. We were like, man, the crowd didn't sound like they were really there like we thought they were going to be. And then when we saw at the after party, we saw the match back on tape, and we're like, oh, okay, they were. It was just that delay that kind of, at least it took us out of it a little bit in terms of, getting that instant reaction, if that makes any sense. But man, we came back and it's one of those deals where the first thing is, are you guys okay?
Yep.
And the second thing is, goddamn.
Yeah. And then, yeah. And it was one of those things too, where, we heard a lot of, man, every time we don't think you guys can top it, you top it, and it is one of those things too, where, you get, it's awesome and it's satisfying when you get your peers, people that you respect, giving you a standing ovation or giving you a pat on the back, telling you did a great job. And, but then we'd always try to just go find a little corner just to be up by ourselves, just kind of have a big group hug and just ask each other if we're all right. The adrenaline's still pumping. You still can't really feel any injuries or anything like that at that point, but we always try to find a little corner for 5-10 minutes and just chill and just hang out and just laugh a little bit,
Yeah, and just kind of like depressurize a little bit, because you know how it is when you have that kind of chemistry in there with someone, and you know that you've just done something that is going to resonate with people for years to come. There's a bond that builds, and you're kind of all in it together, and it's one of those deals where we would go off and find a room and go, oh man, okay, I think we just did it again. Like, damn it. And we're okay. And, so there was always a lot of that, man, we're doing this. We're doing it. And now I look back, and Dudley's are going to the Hall of Fame this year, and, Jay and the Hardys are going to go in, and it's like, okay, we did it. That's where it all started.
Before I let you guys go, tell everybody about your podcast and where they can find it.
Birdman, you want to take this?
Yeah. So it's ENC's Pod of Awesomeness, and you can find it, wherever you get your pods, Steve. It's on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, all those good places, And it's basically, it's just us kind of busting each other's balls, just having some fun and talking like idiots, like we normally do. And if you like the kind of stuff, then listen to, give it a listen.
You guys doing one show a week?
We're doing one show a week. It drops Fridays, and we've only had one so far. It's called Anatomy of a Match. And it was Jay's idea. And to just sit down with the people that participated in one match and just talk about nothing but that one match, and just pick apart the whole process. What was the mindset going into it? How did you feel in there? And we want to do you, and we're thinking Bret Hart.
Oh, dude, that'd be such an easy one to break down. It'd be unbelievable. And that's one of my favorite matches of all time with one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. I love Bret Hart. So, yeah, I'd be down for that, because there's a lot of backstory to a lot of the things that went into that match. So, anytime you guys are ready, just let me know.
Yeah, right. Sure. That's one we'd love to do. And, we have one on now, like I said, Adam said, we just did one of them, and it was Shawn Michaels and Mankind from In Your House Mind Games. Very underrated, kind of under the radar match that was just an amazing. If you're gonna I've never been into the putting stars on it, but if you were, it's a 5-star match. It's that good. So it was cool to sit down and get the mindset of those guys and what the outcome was. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, sounds good. Hey, man, it was good talking to both of you guys. And Adam, good luck over there filming. I'm glad you could join us, because, hell, man, with you being all the way over there, I think, based on what I heard in the sound check, it sounds like we're, pretty much in the same room. And, Jay, thanks for calling me back. It was good talking to both of you. Two guys I've got a lot of history with, and we can talk about that again on another podcast in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good.
Don't look at me.
How long?
14 days.
Jesus.
Until we do the podcast, our podcast.
Okay. I will be on the ENC podcast coming up in a week or two, or 3, or whenever. Whenever Adam gets back from overseas and they give me a call, I'm here. I'll catch you guys down the road. I enjoyed it all. Don't look at me. Goodbye.
Thank you for joining us for another classic episode of The Steve Austin Show. Please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and tell your friends. For more Steve Austin Show, go to PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.
Dive into true crime on Pluto TV. Unravel the mysteries with Forensic Files and 48 Hours. Investigate crimes with Dateline 24/7 and Unsolved Mysteries. With thousands of free crime movies and TV shows, Pluto TV is the true home of crime. Download the Pluto TV app on all your favorite devices and start streaming true crime on live channels and on demand. Pluto TV. Stream now. Pay never.
This summer, it's time to get your giggle on. Pluto TV's Summer of Cinema is going to make you LOL with hundreds of free movies all summer long. Get a good chuckle or a deep belly laugh streaming Good Burger, Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, and Anchorman 2, The Legend Continues. From old school to think like a man, this summer you can chortle, howl, or snort your way through your favorite comedies for free. Download the Pluto TV app now. It's every couch potato stream. Summer of Cinema on Pluto TV. Stream now. Pay never.
Yeah.
What's good?
I'm Brian Greenberg.
I'm Victor Rasuk.
Check out our new podcast, We Almost Made It.
You guys might remember us from HBO's How to Make It in America. And guess what? We're going to have actors, athletes, fashion designers, comedians, friends.
We're going to talk hustle, grind, anyone who had a dream and people thought they were crazy, but they chased it anyway. We want to talk about it. We also want to hear from you.
So go follow, rate, and review We Almost Made It at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.
Go ahead and do it.
Do it.
Do it now.
Yo, what's good? It's your boy, Big Brother Jake, a.k.a. Jake Warner, my government name. Check it out. I host a show called the Big Brother Jake Podcast, and I've taken my talents to the biggest and baddest platform on the planet. That's right, baby, PodcastOne. My show is unique as I talk about everything. Life, sports, entertainment, being a single dad juggling several jobs. I'm a hot mess, but it's damn entertaining. Subscribe and review now on Apple Podcasts and listen on PodcastOne or wherever you get your podcasts.